When I say we're moving into the object-oriented programming portion of this course, that isn't entirely true because we've been doing object-oriented programming along the way. And I want to demonstrate that here in a minute with how we've been using methods and some properties of items. But when I talk about moving into object-oriented programming, we're now going to be creating our own classes and creating instances of those classes. But let's talk about how we've been doing actually object-oriented programming all along. So I've created a little program here of an object-oriented programming demo. I do a print statement of strings of methods such as index and upper, and then I create a string, xyz equals South Mountain. And of course in memory what happens is it sets aside a piece of random access memory and places one character of that string in each byte of that memory. And then we can of course print that. But one of the properties of a string is it has length. There are 14 characters here. Now these also have indexes going from 0 to 13, but there are 14 total characters. So we can say length equals len and pass it xyz. This is a method that is often overloaded. We talked about polymorphism previously, that depending on what is in the parentheses would determine what kind of length it gives us. So in this case, it's going to give us the count of characters. So length is not really a method of the string class, although technically, while many languages have string classes, in Python it's built in as a primary variable type. And then we can say print, there are, and format length into the string of their placeholder characters. We'll see how many characters there are. And one thing we haven't talked about, this is fairly new, and I don't think I've mentioned this in previous videos, is I can also do this what we call String Interpolation. That just is new in Python 3.6. Rather than using this placeholder of 0 and doing format.length, I can also say F, and then in quotes, these can be single quotes or double quotes, there are, and a placeholder of the variable name length characters. It's a little bit shorter. I still like the format method in terms of if you want to specify the number of digits for a decimal value. I still use this .format string method. Strings also have a method called index in which we can locate a character. So here I'm going to set a variable called space location equals and take my string xyz and call its index method .index. And then inside the parentheses, what I'm looking for a space. So I have that enclosed in single quotes. So in this case, the index number is going to be 5. Then I'm going to say first word equals xyz, and I can also specify a subrange of that string. Here I'm going to go from index 0, and I want 5 characters. Colon space location is going to give me the word south. I have a little error here. I want second word equals xyz space location plus 1. That's going to be 6. And a colon is going to take it to the end of the string. So it's going to go from 6 all the way to the end of the string and give me the word mountain. And I'm just going to simply print out those two values using an string interpolation. The first word is, but I'm also going to call another method here. First word is also a string value, and I can call the upper method for it and make that all uppercase. And I'll do the same thing with second word. Call its upper method. So we've been using methods of classes. We just haven't really talked about them being classes. We talked about them really being variables. And of course, we always know a method call because a method will always have parentheses after it. And there may or may not be one or more parameters inside the parentheses, or in this case, arguments. So here our argument is just a literal space for index, and the upper does not take any arguments. We've also been using the random class. So this one is not built into Python, so we had to import the random class. So random is a class, and it contains a whole bunch of methods as well, and I put a few of them here. We can see the random instance. We've looked at that before. We can get a certain number of bytes. We can also get a value that's floating point between 0 and 1. We primarily, though, have used the randint method, in which we specify two integers, a and b, and returns a value between those and is inclusive of those values. So my code then is I'm still going to print random class method call demo. It's going to be just kind of title there. Die1 is going to equal random.randint, and we're going to get a value between 1 and 6 inclusive. Now if I hadn't imported random, we would get an error here. So by importing this class, it makes that method and that instance available to us. Die2, we're doing the same thing between 1 and 6, get the total, adding those two together, and then we'll do string interpolation again of print f, and then in quotes, you rolled a die1 and a die2 for a total of total. And die1, die2, and total will be represented by their values. Let me run this. So here's our program having ran. We have string set methods such as index and upper, which is specified there. We've printed South Mountain. There are 14 characters. I did that both ways, using a formatted string and then an F string interpolation. The first word is south. So here is where it's taken the value between indexes 0 and 5 after it found the location of the space, and then called the upper method, turn that all uppercase. We did the same thing for mountain as the second word. We called our random class method called randint and created die1, die2, and they got the total of those. And then our print statement was you rolled a 5, that was die1, and a 4 was die2, and a total of 9, and that was our calculation there of total variable. So we've been using methods that are built into Python, and we can think of those as being classes. But now we're going to make the transition of creating our own classes, our own data types that represent objects in the real world for which we want to be able to store that data and manipulate that data and maybe generate some reports. If you just jumped into this video and haven't seen the prior videos to this, I invite you to check out my Python playlist of videos. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.